Wednesday, May 13th. All eyes are on the Trump-Xi meeting slated to take place over the next 2 days beginning on the 14th of May, with the US president bringing along with him a showy entourage of top tech oligarchs and corporate captains. However, even as Trump boarded his plane for Beijing, his military generals have begun threatening Operation Sledgehammer against Iran if war restarts. The mixed messaging from Trump and his team suggests to many watching the Iran war that he was trying to arm twist, or even blackmail, the Chinese. Pay up, buy more, invest your trillions in America, its data centers, Treasury bills, stock markets, IPOs, energy and whatnot, or the US will bomb Iran and the Strait of Hormuz off the face of the earth. Maybe so, but many analysts also opine that Trump is clueless and has no idea what he is doing or what he should do to climb out of the debacle he created when he unilaterally attacked Iran in February.
It's not clear why he's going, except for the gratification of his ego, which is not small and requires constant feeding, because the Chinese are superb at pomp and circumstance for visitors, and he will have a chance to feel honored by the public events, as seems to be fairly typical of the Trump administration. There's really no evidence of serious preparation for this trip, and normally when you go to the summit, you have so-called Sherpas who go before you and pave the way, reaching agreements or bringing agreements close enough so that the leaders can put them over the top. That does not seem to have happened here, and in fact, we have a hurried meeting today, I believe, in South Korea between the Chinese chief negotiator on trade matters and Treasury Secretary Besant. This has all the earmarks of a last-minute effort to create something that should have been created over months previously. So it's very unclear what will happen in this meeting. President Trump has a group of senior American business executives, primarily from the electronics, cybernetic sector, with him. I'm sure he wants to sell Boeing aircraft to China. He would like to see the recovery of the soybean market that American unreliability has cost. No doubt there are issues to be discussed about artificial intelligence, where the Chinese now are neck and neck with the United States in the race for that. The Chinese approach is, by the way, quite different from that of the States. The Americans are putting huge amounts of money into an effort to create general intelligence. The Chinese are applying AI to practical projects and doing so remarkably with open software rather than the closed software that Silicon Valley develops. So there are issues to be discussed. President Trump has contrived a zugzwang, if you will, a situation like the one in chess where any move you make is going to cause you to lose in the West Asian Persian Gulf region. I'm sure he would like help from the Chinese to extricate himself from the mess that he's created. I don't think that help is going to be forthcoming, despite the fact that the Chinese share an interest with the United States in opening the Strait of Hormuz. China is, after all, the world's largest trading nation and its principal advocate of free trade. So that interest is shared. But beyond that, I don't see shared interests that would impel the Chinese to do anything concrete. And in fact, I think, Glenn, we are now beginning to see the outlines of the post-Iran war future emerge, and they are not favorable to the West. So I think the Chinese probably take the general attitude of, don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Chas Freeman, who is a former ambassador to China, was speaking to Professor Glenn Dyson of the Greater Eurasia podcast. He also pointed out that the final decision to visit China appeared to be made at the 11th hour, without the usual preparatory work or the drafting of preliminary agreements, other than a hastily arranged meeting in South Korea between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and U.S. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent on the eve of the Trump-China visit. Indeed, the irony of it was not lost on other political analysts, including Professor Robert Pape from the University of Chicago.
So as I'm explaining, Iran is knocking on the door of wanting to get in that great power club, and it wants to work with the rivals and enemies of the United States. So those great powers, Russia and China, are not enemies toward each other. They have been opposed rivals and enemies to the United States, and Iran is wanting to be part of that group, and it offers lots of advantages for that group here. And there's lots of ways this can play out over time. So what I think you're seeing is both Russia and China are not immediate. They're not thinking tactically, by the way. I'm not seeing any tactics here by Russia and China. I'm seeing strategy by Russia and China, the opposite of what we're doing. And I think they're looking at this as a long game. They don't want to get too in bed with Iran because Iran is still just emerging. As I said, they could make mistakes. Bad things could happen here. They know that. I think Xi and Putin know that. They're not getting deeply in bed with them. Same time, they're moving more in their direction, and they're starting to think of different things they might be able to do. And I think that this is why China is not trying to put the kibosh on everything. Second big point is that 80% of China's energy does not come from oil. China's been weaning itself off of oil, not going deeper into oil. The 20% that is from oil, 38% comes from the Persian Gulf. So what the Chinese businessman told me last summer, I spent 2 weeks in China visiting advanced industries while we were bombing Fordow, is yes, China may lose 1 or 2% of its GDP, lost oil and this business with Iran. But the bottom line is that America is going to be hurt far worse, the West far worse. And China's whole business growth plan is not built on selling cars to America and the West. It's built a little bit to Europe, but it's built on Asia here. And so what they're going to do is they're probably going to find ways to make up for whatever the damage is in Asia. They're probably going to be trying to figure out how can they build even bigger relationships here on a cheaper basis in Asia here. Trump looks like he's bringing the whole business gang with him. Maybe he's going to try to suck China into getting more deeper involved in the American economy. Think about that for a moment. Well, I'm not quite sure why else he's bringing all of these business people with him. And so it's going to be interesting to see, is Trump actually now going to offer Xi economic bargains in America? We'll see. This is showing just how the fluidity, and when you're desperate as an embarrassed world leader here, you're looking for a lot of ways to try to turn this thing around.
Trump had not too long ago imposed catastrophic tariffs of up to 145% on Beijing, accusing it of stealing technology, economic cheating, dumping goods on the global markets at cutthroat prices, and undermining Western competitors. Yet to other nations in the world, lower-cost Chinese goods have been beneficial, giving global consumers a much-needed alternative to overpriced and uncompetitive Western versions. Indeed, Trump's agitation was clear before boarding his flight to China. Scorned and blamed around the world for putting the global economy at risk, Trump is seen as desperate to end the conflict in Iran, which has caused unprecedented oil price spikes and global inflation. The US president told reporters he would be having a long talk about Iran with President Xi Jinping. Yet, minutes later, as if afraid that might make him look weak and in need for Xi's help to end the debacle, Trump U-turned on his own words, saying, "We have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control." Freeman, the former envoy who acted as translator for ex-President Richard Nixon during the latter's landmark visit to China in 1972, blasted the current U.S. leadership for its short-term thinking and reliance on tactics rather than formulating long-term strategy and transformative policies. Pape too expects little to come out of the much-touted meeting. He expects the U.S. to resume its attacks against Iran before calling again for negotiations with Tehran.
President Trump in Beijing is an engagement in tactics, not strategy. The Nixon move was strategic, not tactical. This is the opposite. And what is really happening of a strategically transformative nature is happening in West Asia.
Because both of those pathways have significant costs for the United States, the world, etc. So you are not seeing a stable movement or a stable equilibrium. The hope was negotiations would be the stable thing. Now what you're on are a branch, a fork in the road. These are both bad choices, as you're seeing, so you would expect bouncing back and forth. So that may mean a few weeks of bombing here, and then back to saying, oh, okay, now we've tried a few weeks of bombing again. Can we get them back to the negotiating table? And I'm telling you that this is going to go on 4 months. This is not going to be, I think, a short term.
Meanwhile, Yale-educated Jiang Shueqin, the academic who shot to fame with his geopolitical predictions, believes the May meeting could just be the first of 3 or 4 meetings he expects to take place this year alone between Xi and Trump. Speaking with Steve Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO podcast, Jiang predicts a grand bargain will be struck between the two superpowers, where the US will publicly reaffirm its recognition that Taiwan is indeed part of China and to renounce future meddling in the issue. In exchange, China will agree to use its billions to help Washington shore up its bond and stock markets, as well as buy oil and gas and other resources from America, including the other nations the US wants to control and vassalize in the Western Hemisphere. These could include Canada, Venezuela, Argentina, Cuba, Greenland, and Mexico.
I think that Trump and President Xi are supposed to meet at least 3 times, possibly 4 times this year. Only this year. The first will be in mid-May in Beijing. And I think that they will start a process in which China and America come to an arrangement that benefits both economically. What does America want? America wants China to continue to buy US treasuries in order to finance the American debt. What does China want? China wants energy, resources from the Western Hemisphere, and it wants to access the American market. So there's no reason why China and America cannot come to an arrangement that benefits both. And Trump is very much a transactional character.
According to Jiang, who did not specify if the grand bargain would happen at this week's meeting or at a future meeting, China is likely to strike a stance where it will be friends with both Russia as well as America. Jiang said Beijing could continue to help Iran and finance Russia, while at the same time also strike deals with the US.
People expect that the United States and China will go to war at some point over Taiwan. It means a lot of people expect that China wants to challenge American hegemony and replace America as the global superpower. But China does not want to do that. China's perfectly happy with America being the world's hegemon, because you have to invest so much of your resources into fighting these wars that back up your nation. China doesn't want to fight these wars. So what China is going to do is try to triangulate between Russia and the United States. This is what happened during the Cold War. When China was not actually on the side of the Soviet Union, China was part of the non-aligned community. And that's what China is going to strive for in World War III, where China may help out Iran, may provide financing for Russia, but it's also going to strike deals with the United States as well. Okay?